things if you decided you wanted to do them, to disobey God. You know, if you could believe that there's a God and believe that Jesus is there and know that you could just, you know, go through the steps, do the baptism thing, all of that, and then go live a life of debauchery, you know, open a strip club, sell illegal narcotics, you know, whatever list you'd like to make, and then just ask for forgiveness. Is that justice?
You know, that's the other part of what you just said. That's you're talking about, you know, accepting God, getting baptized, and then going living a life of debauchery. Well, then you didn't really accept God, because when Christ takes over your life, when you submit, I think you know this. I'm preaching to the choir here. You've heard this message. When you submit yourself to Christ and Christ hears you and takes over you, you don't have a desire to do this stuff anymore. Yeah, I can't speak for the Catholic Church, okay? I'm not Catholic. So why they molested little boys, I don't know. I could pretty much tell you it's probably because they do a lot more talking about it than being about it. Just my 2 cents. I have so little desire to sin. It's still there once in a while, don't get me wrong. I'm going to tell you, most of my sinning right now is by accident or by lack of choices sometimes. Most of the sinning that I'm aware of, I know there's sins we commit that we're not aware of, but the ones that I'm aware of, you know, when you are overwhelmed with the Spirit of Christ, you just lose this desire to do stuff. I lose this desire to get revenge on people. I used to want to beat the crap out of people, dude. I really did. You called me a name, and I was ready to break your freaking nose, okay? I've lost that desire. Now, I still get in arguments with people, but most of the time, I can sit there and relax and just let the peace of God take over me, and it doesn't really bother me. Now, I can rile people up, don't get me wrong, and I know that's wrong too, but really the desire to hurt people is gone. The desire to make things worse is gone. Now, the desire to get people to see how infantile they can be, obviously that's still there. I don't remember seeing that as a sin. I don't know, maybe it is, but regardless, the major stuff is just gone. It's really gone, and that's how I would say, you know, when you're talking to a Christian, you lose all that. We are to be a reflection of God. When people see us, they're supposed to see the living Christ. Less of us, more of Him. And if you don't see that, if you're looking at somebody and you don't see that, I mean, of course, there's a lot of people that will, you know, just argue with you no matter what, say, you ain't God, you don't know nothing about Jesus Christ. I read this and this and this in the Bible, and that's it, and that's the end of the story. That's what I was taught in Sunday school. That's why I'm an atheist now. There's those people, and you know they're there. I know they're there. And there's those Christians out there that are Christians in name only, for sure, that like to start fights with atheists, that want to just beat and punch and fight constantly. I would say, I'm not an authority here and I'm not going to name any names, but I would say that those are the people that need to look deep inside themselves and ask themselves, are we really talking about the same God? Are we talking about Jesus Christ here? Because it sure don't feel like it to me. And I actually just called a guy out on it today, as a matter of fact, a very, very popular YouTuber who uses a lot of cuss words and calls himself a Christian. So hopefully he'll take what I said to heart. Jury's still out.
The big one that grabbed me was Dew in the Morning's question. She said to you that you know, her experience is not, she wasn't raised in a religious family, and you know, your claim on your channel that that you think everyone knows God and is just denying it, or something to that effect. How do you square that with her assertion that she really doesn't think that there's a God and really doesn't have any inclination of believing in God? And you said, well, you think that she really does deep down. The thing is, I am not like her in that I was raised religious, and I'm not like you in that, you know, I reached a point, like you reached a point, you said that you realized that you had just sort of always had known. You had always known that there was a God and just hadn't really admitted it to yourself or something like that. I have a similar thing, but it's the opposite. I was raised going to church. I was raised very religious, and I was indoctrinated thoroughly. And I reached a point when I sort of realized that all along I had been being sold something. And all of the apologetics are there, and all of the excuses and explanations and all those things are there because reality isn't there for those claims. So how would you square that? I don't think you're being dishonest, so don't misunderstand. But you saying that you just have a feeling that she really does know that there's a God and isn't admitting it because that was your experience. Well, my experience is the opposite. I really tried to continue believing in God because I was afraid not to. I was thoroughly terrified. Thoroughly terrified. I didn't want to go to hell. But, if I'm looking at a red car, no matter how much you threaten me, I can't truly believe that the car is blue if I can see that it's red. Do you know what I mean by that? I just sort of realized that all the stuff that I had been believing all along wasn't true. And I think, based on your approach, I could reasonably say to you, I think that deep down you really believe, you really know that that God isn't real. I think that you actually know that, and you're just not admitting it to yourself. Now, I don't actually know if that's the case, but I could just as reasonably make that claim about you as the claim you made about doing the morning and me as well.
Okay. Let me preface this by saying that, like, your experience and that of, like, Loving Doubt, the people that were like entrenched in their religion, that you grew up in the household, you had family members, you had church every Sunday and Wednesday night, that kind of devotion, and then you're falling away. I respect you guys a lot. I mean, I've brought up Wagner in other videos, but he says he knew when he was 12 that there was no God. And dude, he probably didn't even know what pubic hair was at 12, okay? So I don't think people like that, and I don't mean to use you, Wagner, if you're watching this. I'm just saying that that's an awfully young age to make that kind of life-affirming decision, and apparently it worked for you, and that's great, Wagner, but guys like Wine is Your Friend here, and I would use your first name, but if you told me, I forget. So I apologize, but I really think that your system, what you've gone through, I respect a lot more. Just not that I disrespect the other one, but I feel that you guys have been there, you've lived it, you know it, and something didn't happen for you somewhere along the way. Like you said, you heard all the messages, but God just never talked to you. Okay. That I respect because you were looking. You went looking, you went walking in the forest, and you came out with no acorns. I get it. I understand, and I respect that a lot. So, that being said, how can I square that when I say that I believe that everybody has an inner awareness of God? Well, there's a couple different ways. A cheap, easy way is that the Bible says it. I believe in God. I believe the Bible is the Word of God. Therefore, God said it happens. I believe it happens. Second, but more importantly, now, the hard way, it's just... Now, I also believe that you know that fire is hot. I also believe that you know that water is wet. I also believe that you know that most of the time the sky is blue. You know what I mean? These are just... It's because to me... It's so obvious. Even though I repressed it for most of my life, once I realized it, once I opened my eyes, it was so obvious that, okay, I can't speak for you. Don't get me wrong, but this is just what I believe. I believe that deep down inside, a lot of people are like me and want to repress that and want to hide it because of the politics that they're involved in. And I don't mean politics like Republican, Democrat. I mean politics like the crowds they hang out with, the people they associate with. Right now, let me be honest with you. Right now, I am very entrenched in my religion. I am, and it's going to be hard. If tomorrow there was concrete, 100% proof that there's no God, how would I change? Well, I would have nothing to do Sunday mornings, okay? So there's a whole day I got freed up, plus all the other stuff I do with the music for the church and the website and just stuff like that I'm involved in that would suddenly drastically change. And I would have a hard time. I would cope with it, sure, but I would have a hard time with it. So for an atheist, putting myself in your shoes to just one day, I have no need for God. My friends are all atheists now, the people I associate with. I have this feeling about religion. For you to just change that, for that just to, bam, go away, it's nearly impossible. And because of that, I firmly believe that it's very hard for you to admit certain aspects of the Bible are true. And because if you did, it would change your worldview, and it would be like a creationist admitting that abiogenesis is true or some aspects of it. Once you allow for some aspects, then you open the floodgates, and people are afraid of that. And I see that in you, that like you spent years searching, you didn't find it, you got on a different path, you got a different crowd. I don't, like I said, I don't know a lot about your family, but I'm assuming probably your wife is not religious either. So I imagine that you walk down this path together. Maybe I'm wrong, but just what I imagine is that you're walking down this path together, and you love each other very much. Don't get me wrong. You guys probably have a great relationship. You seem like a great guy and a great dad. So I would imagine that for you to start to let little things about religion in, like me saying that there is an inner awareness that everybody has of God, if you were to allow that, if you were to just open the heart just a little bit to let that in, then it could be devastating to your worldview, and you might be afraid of what implications that could have on your relationships, your friendships, our YouTube careers. You know what I mean? Not that there's any money being made, but you know what I mean. That sometimes allowing for the smallest thing to creep in, you're afraid of the ripple effect of changes. So that's how I square that away. And I understand it. I definitely understand. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong to do. We all do it. There's certain things that I don't even want to hear nothing about, okay? Just because I don't want to get caught up in that. I'm not gonna tell you what they are, but there's things I just don't want to get caught up in because it could have implications on my worldview, and I don't need to deal with that right now. I don't. I got other things that I'm dealing with that are more important. So that's kind of how I square that away. And maybe you'll fight me tooth and nail. Maybe you'll argue with me until we're both blue in the face. But really, I think if we did that, it would only serve to prove that what I'm saying is right. So, and doing the morning has kind of taken me to task on that. And the more she argues with me, the more I think, she must be afraid of something. That's the more I feel that I'm right. Hopefully that answers your question. Hopefully I didn't dance around too much. So, on to the next one.
And at the end, you said to her, well, you're talking about God, so you must have some concept of God. And as if that's, all due respect, man, as if that's something.
Yeah, that's not an argument, and I realize that. And how can I put this? Comment sections suck. They suck. 500 characters is not enough to get your point across. And even if you try, and you take up 3 comments to 1,500 characters to try to get your point across, what you really wanted to say always gets lost in there. So, yeah, that was a cheap, easy, quick way out for me because, yeah, you're talking about God, so you know about him. Right. Kind of just get off my back because we're not going to get anywhere in the comment section is what I was getting at with that. So I apologize to her and to you that was kind of unfair, but it really sort of did end the conversation at that point. So
I talk about God. I talk about Zeus. I've talked about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and Superman and Buzz Lightyear. That just means I have a concept of the character. It doesn't mean that I secretly believe that they really exist. I know that you get that.
What about Santa Claus?